you again. I will just rerun the sermon from this morning, so if you've heard it already, you should get used to it again. But we're glad to have you here. It is a very special day in the life of this church, in the life of each one of our members, Dr. Wallace and Dr. Val, and I cannot help but tell you how important this is. I mean, 200 years, what can I say? Heaven and days. If you have not had a chance to read in the back of the bulletin here, that the brief history of the church, read it. It is remarkable to watch how this church grew and grew, started with the traditional Methodist classes and grew to what it is now, grew to what bigger than what it is now, but never more faithful, never more loving and caring than what it is now. And we're glad that you're here to be a part of it. Let's begin with hymn number 557, and it's not going to be on the board up here. You're going to have to do it the good old-fashioned and open up your hymnal and read it. 557, Blessed be the tie that binds. Let's stand together, please.
Deliver his greeting to you. And as we celebrate 200 years of ministry. This New Franklin Church this afternoon. I bring congratulations to you from 155 churches in the North Central District. And he mentioned that is we have 80 now is 155. And we want to rejoice together for what God has done to New Franklin United Methodist Church over the last 2 centuries, and for what God has in store for the years to come. I cannot imagine the number of people who have found Jesus through your mission and ministry over the last 200 years. Can you count it? How many people have been healed? How many people in the community have received God's care and love? Your grandparents, parents, your children, and your family and friends, they found their spiritual home here and deepened their faith in Christ and nurtured each other through the generations for over 200 years. It is amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. So congratulations on your history of faith, mission, and ministry. And as we celebrate today, we know it is the beginning of a new chapter of New Franklin United Methodist Church. And we remind ourselves that God has called us to the community and beyond the community to transform the world as a disciple of Jesus Christ. We have experienced radical changes in the world through the pandemic. Do you agree with that? We never thought most of churches would have to have online services. In our district, most of 95% of the churches have online services nowadays. Our children and grandchildren who live in the technology world think differently from us. Everything is changing every day, but God's radical love never changes. As we look forward to 2 years to come, we need to ask ourselves some questions. So, if you're a church member, would you raise your hand? If you're a church member, is it there? So I want to hear from you. So here it is. I'm going to ask you questions. Do you stand on faith? Yes. All right. It's good starting. Will you follow God's dream for this community and to reach out to new disciples? Yes. A little bit louder, right? Do you have the courage to sacrifice your want to step into God's mission? Yes. Yes. That's what. So, are you ready to be out of your own comfort zone? Yes. Yes. It is the beginning of the new chapter for this church. As we celebrate 200-year anniversary and move forward, and I want to finish with the Isaiah's word from Isaiah chapter 43. Don't revel only in the past, or spend all your time recounting the victories of days gone by. Watch closely. I am preparing something new. It is happening now. Do you see? It is happening now, even as I speak. And you are about to see it. I am preparing a way through the desert. Waters will flow where there had been none. That is God's word for us today. God will do the new things for this church and then also this community. Thanks for being here. And amen.
Amen. We are very blessed today because we are going to add something into the program, and I think you'll enjoy it too. We have a very special guest here with us. Representative Tim Taylor is going to bring us greetings from the state. We look forward to it.
First, thank you for letting me come here. 200 years is quite impressive. I would ask, are there any churches that are older in the community? I mean, I'm a history buff, but I don't know of any. So it's amazing. So part of my job is this part. This part is what I enjoy the most about being a politician, and that is being able to recognize individuals, churches, groups who do great things and who have lived, well, they've lived 200 years, so congratulations. I have a resolution that I'm going to present to the church, and I would like to read it to you if I may, and then
Sure.
present it. Whereas the members of the Missouri House of Representatives proudly pause to recognize New Franklin United Methodist Church in New Franklin, Missouri, which is celebrating its 200th anniversary on September 25th, 2022. And whereas Franklin, the first town in the Boone's Lake country, was the first county seat of Howard County and was laid out in 1816 on the banks of the Missouri River. And whereas it was there in 1822 that William W. Redmond organized a Methodist class, and members met for worship in their homes and at the courthouse. And whereas around 1826 it became evident that the town of Franklin was doomed as the Missouri River changed its course and began to cut away the land on which the town was built. So a new location was chosen on the bluffs about 2 miles northeast of Franklin. And the town of New Franklin was established in 1828. And whereas the first church building was constructed in 1840 and was first led by Grandma Robertson, who was accredited as being the first church leader in New
Thanks, Shelby. Jess Spurgeon is here with his wife Ann. And Jess, Ann, and Sam were here from 2001 to 2004. So I will turn it over to you, Jess.
Thank you, and God bless you. It's a privilege to be back here, and I have to tell you, I served a lot of small local churches, and unfortunately, many of them have closed for various reasons. This one, on the other hand, not just has it not closed, but it appears to continue to grow and be an important force in the community. I really believe that. I will just say, I like what Shelby said and what everybody said for that matter. There have been changes, certainly. I don't remember that on the wall being here. I would have had a lot of fun with it, I'm sure. But I've done a lot of pulpit supply. I haven't served the church for quite a while. And pulpit supply, I think, fits me pretty well, and I still enjoy visiting and doing some things from time to time. I would just say, I filled pulpits for the Disciples of Christ, 3 Presbyterian churches, by the way, and believe it or not, 3 small country Southern Baptist churches. So that tells you that there are probably small churches that are having difficulty filling their pulpits. But it looks to me like you've got a good solid hand here, and I'm glad. I'm not going to say any more except to say, I would like to say one thing. I really do. I'd like to see the denomination come back, and maybe they are, to the classes that we talk about. We read, we study Wesley's classes, and while we have classes, I think we need to include personal accountability. That's done me a lot of good. When I've had people that I've had to be honest with, and I really think those classes could still be important. If it's not happening, I think it should. God bless all.
Thank you, Jess. Clayton? Clayton was here for an eternity for our church.
I was ever loved. Regardless of whether I did things right or I did things wrong. But it's also the first place that I ever had gooey buttercake. It's the first place I ever had a piece of real pecan pie. It was the first place I had truly amazing coconut meringue pie. It's the first place I'd ever tasted pimento cheese. This was a place of firsts for me. And I want you all to know that I carry all of those firsts with me. Everywhere I've been, every appointment I've had. And it's you that helped make me the pastor that I am. And for that, I am eternally thankful. I'm so blessed to have had you all in my life. Thank you.
Leave it to Clayton to always cause the tears to come to mind. I think those are the only ministers that ministered in this church that are here, not yell at me. But we would also like to hear from David Norberry, who I think has had some part in Clayton's life. If David would come up, because David grew up in this church. I'm sure he's got lots of stories.
When our family moved to this area in 1951, just after the flood, we had a choice to make about where to go to church. Because we lived out in the river bottoms, and we lived closer to Clark's Chapel than we did to New Franklin. And Clark's Chapel is where we went to school, because that was still a one-room schoolhouse in those days. And so we visited in all places, both places, and our parents decided that this was going to be our church home. And it was my church home, and in many ways, it's still my church home, because as I was sharing with my granddaughter after lunch today, it's the only church to which I ever belonged. Because when I became a deacon in the life and ministry of the United Methodist Church, my membership went to the annual conference. And so my church membership is in the Missouri Conference of the United Methodist Church. So this is the only church to which I ever belonged. And I joined when I was in the 7th grade, because that's when you did it in those days. You went through confirmation or membership classes, and then you joined the church. And as my wife and I were coming today, we started naming names of people who I remember, or she remembered, sitting in the pews, those saints of the past who are with us today. And I believe that they're listening in, and they're leading us on still. Celebrate all those lives. People who taught me in Sunday school and supported me when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I was asked to do a devotion for a sub-district meeting that was of the Methodist Youth Fellowship that was held in this church. And I worked for that devotion. And I thought, boy, this is probably going to last at least 30 minutes. And I think I was done in less than 3. And past congregations probably wish that I had learned to stop at 3 minutes. Because as you grow older in ministry, you seem to be a little longer. Now that I'm retired and I only preach once in a while, I think sometimes they go longer and longer and longer. Because it's my one chance to preach. But this is a very special place. It was at this pulpit that I preached my first sermon. And when I was in seminary, and Mary and I came back for a visit to home, Doyle Phelps was your pastor. He invited me to preach, and after it was over, he said, you know, these seminary students don't have a lot of money. So we need and sometimes they go hungry. And so we need to have a love offering. And I think it was $80, and in those days, that was a lot of money back in the 60s. Because not knowingly introduced me to my wife, Mary, because she had come to work at the Howard County Cooperative Ministry, which was 13 United Methodist churches in Howard County. And she did a play and worked for 2 years, helping in the life and ministry of local congregations that come to cooperative ministry. And she went back to North Carolina to Duke to pursue her master's degree in religious education. And I was still a college student at Central Methodist, and we kept in touch. And as I graduated from college, I proposed and we got married, and that was 54 years ago. But this church still is supportive of us and has had a special place in our lives. As Joe was sharing, I have to tell you, Joe asked me to speak, and I said, I'm the pastor of this church. He said, yeah, but you have a part to play in ministry, so out of this church, and I thought, yeah, you do my taxes too. You always want to be good to your accountant. But as he was sharing some of those remarks from Mr. Kingsbury, I thought my older sister, my younger sister, my younger brother stood right there and exchanged vows to get married. That was a part of this church. When my mother died 11 years ago, her funeral was held in this church. And we laughed because she'd been cremated and her remains were there, and our grandson is now 21, but he was only 10 then, didn't know what they were, and he was up here playing drums on his grandmother's urn. And he said, you don't do that. She said, what? And we told him what it was, and he said, oh, okay. But he noticed that over here there was a bag of chocolate. I think it was Clayton's chocolate. And I noticed it, my brothers noticed it, and one of my brothers said, why don't we open that up and pass it around? You know how much our mother loved chocolate. And I said, well, it's not ours. Well, it's tempting, but we didn't open it, and we celebrated her life, and I had the privilege of preaching her funeral from this pulpit on that day. And it was a great day together as family, and to remember again what this church has meant in our lives and continues to mean in our lives, because for me, this is home and always will be, no matter where I go. And we're now retired. I retired after, it was this church that recommended me for my license to preach in about 1966, and I didn't ask for it. I was just informed, oh, we recommended you for a license to preach, now you got to do it. And Jeff Marsh was the district superintendent. He brought me that news when I was preaching at Higby, and I went from there to Ohio, and then got married, and the rest is history, so to speak. So thank you for all that you have done in our lives and the life of our family, because this is home.
Thank you, David. Cynthia Sterling Zolk is also here, and we would like to ask Cynthia to say a few words. If you're here in this church, you've been touched by the Sterlings, especially Mr. Sterling, both of them. But he sat for several years, a few rows behind me in the pews, and the best thing about that was all I heard was his voice, and I didn't hear my own. So that was and when he was no longer there, it was really a shock at how bad I sounded. But I'll tell you this, I still hear him. He's still here, Cynthia.
Just want to reiterate a few things about some things that Joe and others have said about all the young people being here. I first thought, I don't really recognize a lot of people, and then I realized that's the way it should be. I've been gone for at least 50 years, in a way, and it should be different when you reach return because it's a sign that, yes, that the church is continuing to grow. It's been so wonderful to meet or to see some people that I grew up with in this church. David, and he and I haven't had a chance to talk yet, but, and Susan Rude. It's really good to reconnect with her. And so I want to also say that your formative years, your young years, are so important. And oftentimes we don't realize that until we're old, like me. And when you return to a place like this, you do realize how important those formative years really were. I probably need to begin. I wasn't going to do this, but I think I need to say that I am an ordained pastor in the Northern Illinois Conference, and Mion and I met today, and we have something in common, believe it or not. We both attended Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary at one point. We weren't there together, but nonetheless, we do have that connection, and it's been so nice to meet you, to get acquainted. So, well, I want to start by saying that at about 16 or 18 months old, my parents moved to 2 doors away from this church, the house that's just next door to the parsonage. And so had a big playground here on this side yard, and remember coming up here to play, and also vividly remember standing on the church steps, the 2 banisters that were on the side. I didn't do it in front of anybody, but I used to walk out onto the edge of one of those banisters and preach. I was quite young, but I can still see, I can see myself standing out there preaching a sermon. Don't ask me what I said, but that's what I did. Anyway. So, living next door to the parsonage, of course, there were pastors in the parsonage. The first one that I had any connection with was Reverend Klein and his wife. And I used to go over to the front door, knock on the front door, and I wanted to go in. And so whoever answered the door, I asked for the other one so that they would let me in. Do you want to come in? Well, yes, I want to come in. And so I would go in, and mostly I just watched her cook or something like that. But I also loved to help them with their strawberries. They had a strawberry patch out here in the back, and I loved to help with those, and they let me do it, no matter how many I squished and destroyed. Another pastor was the Hamptons. I don't remember too much about them, but they were there nonetheless. And then the Burdens, they were there for a few years, and she loved to play the piano and sing, and of course it was before air conditioning and the windows were always open, and so you could have a concert almost every day from her. He had a reputation of driving pretty fast, and he wouldn't slow, when he'd come home from visits or wherever he'd been, he wouldn't slow down at the driveway. And he would turn that corner into the driveway, and he had an old push mower, and he had left it, I guess, right out in the yard, and he ran over it one day. Yeah, well, that's, just some of the funny stuff that had happened. As far as the inside here, I particularly remember Sunday school time, the gathering time downstairs, Mildred Amy playing the piano for us to learn those old Sunday school songs that we learned. Susan Heron then taking over that and sometimes playing the organ here. Eventually, I started playing the piano for them downstairs, and sometimes I would play the organ here when Mr. Lobern thought he needed a break, which I'm sure he did. And but I'm grateful for the opportunities of being able to do that, because again, it was a very formative time. I remember a particular Sunday school class with Wanda Alsop, and she had us learning all the books of the Bible and specific Bible passages, and she had a little contest going, and if you could reach all the goals that she had set, well, then she would give you a Bible. And that's how I got my first Bible, was going through all of that with her and learning all the books of the Bible and all those verses. I particularly remember high school Sunday school class with Mr. Charles Whitten. Remember how he used to make us think, really made us think. We didn't probably realize it at the time, but he did. I remember youth fellowship with Reverend Dwight Bingham and all the Foursquare that we used to play downstairs, but we always had a time of worship and conversation along with our UMYF meetings. I remember summer church camp, and I think David and I probably went a couple of times at the same time. Youth camp, I believe it was Camp Joda. I think I'm right on that. I remember the vacation Bible schools, the Christmas programs, the Easter breakfast. I remember singing in choir and probably starting to sing in choir long before I should have, but with your dad as the director, that was kind of a shoe-in, I guess. I remember singing duets with my father. I remember playing the organ. So my journey began with my baptism here in this church by Reverend Klein, confirmation by Reverend Dwight Bingham, married by Reverend Doyle Phelps. I loved the church and I enjoyed learning. And as a young child standing out there on that ledge preaching my sermons, I was feeling an urge to serve the church. I didn't know it then, but I realized it later. But at the time, I felt that it would probably be as a deaconess or as a missionary, because at that time, there really weren't a lot of ordained clergy women, and I had never met a clergy woman until I moved to Illinois. And there were a few clergy women there, and I became quite active in the local church that I was attending. I served in various capacities, and as a lay person, I was very active in what was then United Methodist Women at the local district and conference levels. And it was through all of that that my call to ministry was confirmed. I entered seminary, Garrett Evangelical, in 1984. I served as an ordained deacon in the Northern Illinois Conference for 28 years. I am now a retired pastor, but I still preach. I still serve on conference boards. I'm currently on the conference board of our Conference Council of Finance and Administration. And I still claim my ministry, and it all began right here.
Thank you. I have something that giving offense, their lack of speed, and also for their secret fondness for macaroni and cheese. But nobody sings like them. If you were to ask an audience in New York City, a relatively Methodist place, to sing along on the chorus of Michael Rowed the Boat Ashore, they'll look daggers at you as if you asked them to strip down to their underwear. But if you do this among Methodists, they'd smile, row that boat ashore and up on the beach, and down the road. Many Methodists are bred from childhood to sing in four-part harmony, a talent that comes from sitting on the lap of someone singing alto or tenor or bass and hearing the harmonic intervals by putting your little head against that person's rib cage. It's natural for Methodists to sing in harmony. They're too modest to be soloists. They're too worldly to sing in unison. When you're singing in the key of C and you slide into the A7th and the D7th chords, all of you, it's an emotionally fulfilling moment. By joining in harmony, they somehow promise that they will not forsake each other. I do believe this, he said. People, Methodists who love to sing in four-part harmony are the sort of people you can call up when you're in deep distress. If you're dying, they will comfort you. If you're lonely, they will talk to you. If you're hungry, they'll give you tuna salad. Methodists believe in prayer, but would practically die if they were asked to pray out loud. Methodists like to sing, except when confronted with a new hymn or a hymn with more than 4 verses. Methodists believe their pastors will visit them in the hospital, even if they don't notify them that they're there. Methodists usually follow the official liturgy and will feel it's their way of suffering for their sins. Methodists believe in miracles and even expect miracles, especially during their stewardship visitation programs or when passing the offering plate on Sunday morning. Methodists think that the Bible forbids them from crossing the aisle while they're passing the peace. Methodists drink coffee as if it were the third sacrament. Methodists feel guilty for not staying to clean up after their own wedding reception in the fellowship hall. Methodists are willing to pay for a church meal, up to $1. Methodists still serve Jell-O in the proper liturgical color of the season. And they think that peas in tuna casserole add too much color. Methodists believe that it's okay to poke fun at themselves and never take themselves too seriously. And finally, you know you're a Methodist when it's 100 degrees with 90% humidity and you still have coffee after the service. You hear something funny during the sermon and Methodists smile as loudly as they can. Donuts are a line item in the church budget. When you watch a Star Wars movie and they say, "May the Force be with you," Methodists respond, "and also with you." And lastly, if you're a Methodist, it takes 10 minutes to say goodbye. I'm glad we can smile at ourselves. I really am. They asked me to reflect on some things. I've been here 7 years. It doesn't seem like it to me. It really doesn't. But the first reflection I have is coming here the second week, she said, you know what? They made friends with me already. And she wouldn't be anywhere else. They were friends enough. She visited her in the hospital when she had her aneurysm. No church anywhere ever had anybody visit my wife in the hospital. You're a friendly church. I've told you before how astounded and how wonderful I think it is that this church believes so much in prayer. I read this in the back of the thing today and hadn't realized it. But it says, old people in Franklin, long since gone to their reward, used to tell of the power of prayers of Grandma Roberts in a meeting. If we didn't pray, folks, she'd be back upon us, I think. But we do pray. We pray every day for people to get better. My wife's life was saved with your prayers. I'm changed because of your prayers. Everybody here, in one way or another, has felt the power of your prayer. I look back at those 7 years and I reflect on the faith of this church, on what you believe. And I mean, those of you that are here today that have come back, you're a part of it. Those of you ministers who have come back, you're a part of it. You built that faith. No church lasts 200 years without faith. A strong belief that when you walk in that door, God is going to be here. Say, welcome. And a faith that when you walk out that door, God's got you by the hand and is going home with you. You believe that. That's our faith. That's what we believe. It's who we are. That's what's going to keep us a church for years to come. It's made us a church for this many years, and it's not over yet by any means, shape, or form. It's going to continue. Because, folks, we are United Methodists. We are Christians. We are all children in the family of God, and we're brothers and sisters together. And boy, I can't tell you that there's nothing better than that. And I am proud to be here. And I thank God, and the DSs should thank God too, that they brought me here at the time they did. Because if they brought me here as my first church, they'd have found a second church for me, only with me kicking and screaming and hollering and saying, don't take me, I'm going to stay here. I love it. I love each one of you. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be your pastor. Let's stand together and sing hymn number 572. Yeah.
We did want to give past and present members.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like if they want to.
Okay.
Anybody out there that would like to?
Yeah, any of y'all want to say anything? We'll hear you. It's kind of like asking to pray our God. Well, if nobody wants to say anything, then we're going to sing.
I want to know how many kids did you baptize while you were here?
How many?
17.
Good. Good.
I think he put something in our communion those years.
Well, some pastors have one form of evangelism, some have other forms of evangelism. Anybody else? Bill?
Mr. Kingsbury used to sit up there and play the organ every morning as people were coming in. And there was one morning we come in and there was a lot of chatter going on in here. And I stopped and listened to his music. And I thought, that don't sound like a church song. After church, I asked him, I said, Mr. Kingsbury, I said, that song you were playing, it sounded an awful lot like that tune that they play as the world turns. said, "You're the only one that noticed."
Well, you got a good mark that day. Anybody else?